Hello friends, today we're going to have a pop quiz. Question number 1. What is this? Wait, there's more. Question number 2. What is this? There's more. Question number 3. What is this? Are you getting them all? Question number 4. What in the world is this? The 4 swords I just showed you are examples of what I and others came to call fake Hercules swords. They have a Hercules figure. At the top, he's holding a log there, which is his club. He's got his lion skin on. This is actually a fairly detailed example. You can see a lot of the details. This one has fullers on the blade. They are modern in the sense of late 20th century productions, produced for the tourist trade. Sold, I think all the origin stories that we have them being sold outside of Pompeii, though now actually this is a cast iron one that's sold through a garden store, I think for like 20 bucks or something. It's made from the same mold. Where we have metallurgical analysis of the ones that are brass or bronze, they are brass. They are modern brass with high zinc content. So they're not ancient at all. The reason why any of this is important and why anyone cares, I don't really care. I think they're fairly ugly. They're not that interesting. But because our knowledge about these is a direct result of a claim that was made that kind of the first one that became public was an actual Roman artifact that was found in the New World with context, and therefore we should all get out our pens and start rewriting the history books. Let me start by reading that original claim. Wow, okay, it looks like there really is an attempt to rewrite history here, because the original article from December, I think it was from December 16th, 2015, would that be right? 2015, 2017, 2016, I don't even know. Let's see, when is this blog post dated? 2015. So I first wrote about this on December 16th, 2015. There was an article in a paper called the Boston Standard. It's a small UK paper. It's not Boston, Massachusetts, or anything like that. But the claim was that this sword, which I used to have a video link to, which has now disappeared, was a 100% confirmed Roman artifact. This is in the words of the investigator. 100% confirmed Roman artifact. A smoking gun, to some theory that we're going to all have to rewrite history and that sort of thing. So 100% confirmed. That is for all the marbles. That is no shadow of a doubt left. Here we have an artifact. It's going to change everything, yada, yada, yada. We've heard the story before. Anyway, the original article from the Boston Standard has apparently now been removed. So that page is gone. Thank goodness for screenshots, I guess. The video link to it is gone. The sword was supposedly found in a shipwreck. What's the story? A man and his son were scalloping off Oak Island, which sees them hang rake-like objects off the back of the boat. When they brought this up, the sword came up with it. They thought they were going to get in trouble due to restrictions, made all private shipwreck diving for treasure outlawed, so they freaked out about it. Father kept this for decades, this being the sword. And when he died, it went to his wife, then his daughter. When she died many years later, it went to her husband. It was he who came forward to the island and said, I think you should know about this, and this is what I found. So this supposed artifact doesn't really have an origin story other than it was passed down, and here it is, and it's been a secret. The guy who was claiming that he had 100% confirmed it had been on the television program Oak Island in the past, and I am actually foggy on all the details now. But anyway, when I read this, a 100% confirmed artifact, that's going to change history, unlike many of these other claims that I deal with, like we actually had a piece of material evidence that was given to us for a claim, and it said, this is it. This is the thing that is going to change everything. So to me, that seemed like a good opportunity to kind of engage with the story and see whether this artifact really was what it was claimed to be, whether the interpretations were correct, whether the facts would hold up, and to try to figure out what was going on here. I am not a Roman sword expert. I really know nothing other than kind of the most basic outlines of Roman archaeology. That's not my field. That's not what I do. When I first looked at the picture of the sword, the original sword that was held up, and I'll put a picture on the screen now as I'm talking if I can still find one. When I looked at that picture, I thought this does not really look like what I would think a Roman sword would look like. It appeared to be, you know, a copper or bronze or brass artifact, patina all over it, very uniform. The figure was in the handle of the sword, the hilt was in the shape of a human figure, which didn't make a whole heck of a lot of sense, and the thing just kind of looked beat. But I said, okay, let's have a look. And it was really interesting because this story about the Roman sword, the first claim that was 100% confirmed, kind of took off. It got a lot of traction. It was on Yahoo News, whatever. And I wrote about it on my blog very quickly, and my blog started getting a lot of traffic also. And the reason was because people were searching for some kind of other information about this, whether this could be true. What's the story behind this? So I had immediately kind of created I guess a resource or a place where people knew they could go to get another opinion. One of the first things that happened was somebody commented on this blog post, blah, 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 blah. Someone down here, Doug Crowell, who is now, I think he actually is on Curse of Oak Island now. He says, "Hi Andy, there appears to be another antique sword of its ilk on this site," and he gives me the web address, which states it's a Roman gladiator ceremonial or votive gladius. So that was the second sword. So now we have not only a unique claim of a unique Roman sword from Nova Scotia, we've got an example of another sword that looks a lot like it, that's in a collection in, he didn't say it's here, but it turns out to be in a collection of Florida. When I wrote about that sword, it was within a day or two, I got an email from a guy in California who had a very, very similar sword that he had bought at an estate sale. I think it was for 25 bucks. And so that was sword number 3. We called that the California sword. Then, once people started looking for these swords, somebody found one for sale on eBay. We called that the Italian eBay sword. A person who I'm still friends with on Facebook, Trevor Furlot, bought that sword, had it shipped to Canada. He had it sent it down to me. We eventually had that one tested also. I was able to do a 3D scan of it and all that sort of thing. That was sword number 4. And then we found that somebody was selling these, probably made in China. This is a cast iron version. Do I have a magnet I can show you? People have accused this of being, or have said that this was plastic. This is my magnet here in the shape of a lemon. That is most certainly not a plastic sword. It's cast iron, just like we said. You can probably still buy those. It was like 20 or 30 bucks or something like that. I think that got sword number 5. Anyway, this keeps on going and it keeps on snowballing. We are now up to, I think this is a poster that Peter made. The highest number is 25, but we actually might be up to 27 or something. We kind of lost steam after a while. The point is that making this, you know, the understanding of this mystery or this claim available to the public generated all kinds of information about these swords. When the people were kind of rolling with it in the Oak Island part, and the guy who made the claim that it was 100% confirmed, they really only knew about maybe 2 or 3 of them. They knew about the Florida one, I believe. There might have been another one rumored to be in a collection somewhere. They had no idea that there were this many swords out there. But once we crowdsourced it through the miracle of the internet, these things start rolling in. Some of them have no information attached to them. Some of them were bought firsthand by people. Some of them have a location and a time and that sort of thing. So it turns out that these are not uncommon items at all. And they're probably sold by souvenir vendors outside of Pompeii. What we were able to do by getting a lot of different examples of these is create a timeline. Metal expands when it's warm, and it shrinks when it's cool. So when you make a mold of something and then fill it with molten metal, the cast, the second generation, will be smaller than the original because the metal will fill up the mold when it's warm, and then it will contract as it cools down. So size tells us something about the ordering of age in these, or at least kind of maybe the proliferation of the different generations and that sort of thing. And also detail. as you cast something with fine detail over and over and over again, you lose resolution in the details. So we were able to create a whole kind of timeline structure and framework to think about these, from ones that had a lot of detail and were bigger, and then features go missing, the blades get replaced, different casting anomalies appear and are then passed on, and so on and so forth. So there's a lot of kind of logic and reasoning and observation going on with these swords, and each time we got a new one, we were able to add in to the data set, and some of them, you know, being from known places and known times and that sort of thing, kind of helped us pin it down in time and create what's called a chronology. And we were able to show via that chronology that we created from all of this crowdsourced information on the internet that the sword that was put forward as the 100% confirmed Roman sword had to be in the middle generation somewhere, in the middle of this timeline. It was not the first one. These were not all copies of that sword, because it had defects or anomalies, as we would call them, in kind of the shape and the features of the Hercules figure and the blade especially, that showed that it was not a first generation, it was somewhere in the middle. We were able to determine that with all of this crowdsourced information and with some deduction and a lot of hard work from a lot of people before they actually had the results of the metallurgical testing appear on Oak Island. And so we totally nailed it, and we showed that that sword could not possibly have been an original Roman artifact. And of course that turned out to be the case. It was also made of high zinc brass of a kind that the Romans did not make, and it had other indicators that suggested that it was a post-19th century item in terms of its manufacturing characteristics. The point here is that this was a very valuable exercise in terms of engaging with the public on a question, on a specific claim that we could sort out. We showed how you could use different independent lines of evidence and reasoning to come to the same conclusion, how you could use evidence to throw out conclusions or interpretations that certainly had to be wrong. We were able to falsify things. We were able to demonstrate how the more evidence you get, the more probable some conclusions or interpretations seem, while other ones can be shown to be impossible. That's the scientific process in a nutshell, and we were able to demonstrate it with these swords, these silly, kind of worthless brass souvenir trinkets. So this whole kind of bunch of stuff that we figured out, and this kind of exercise in the scientific method and crowdsourcing the internet and how it unfolded is now under attack. I've gotten demands to take down parts of it, at least. Anyway, there's an effort underway, I should say. I should try to be a little bit vague. It's not hard to figure out. There's an effort underway to get this story taken away. And I think it's because it turned out to be such a clear outcome to those who are kind of willing to open their eyes and take in the evidence and the reasoning and the understanding, that it's probably embarrassing for the people who held on to or are still holding on to this story. I'm not inclined to take it all down. And the reason is because I think it's important. I think it has value both for what we accomplished, but for how it was accomplished as an example of the way, you know, the scientific method kind of being acted out in real time in a crowdsourced fashion is fascinating, and it's useful, and everything that happened actually happened. It's true. So erasing links to stories and trying to get things to go away, that's not the kind of rewriting history that I'm going to kind of willingly go along with. I will tell you that right now. Imagine if I woke up in the morning and I said, I'm going to go call the newspaper. I'm going to get somebody to come here and do a story on me and my claim that the sun revolves around the earth. Let's go with that one. It's a classic. The sun revolves around the earth. I have confirmed this 100%. I am working on a white paper about it with a lot of other noted scholars. We are going to have to rewrite everything. You will see. If I made that claim, presumably somebody out there, if the claim started to get traction, would go, you know what? It's worth creating a counterpoint to that claim. Let's see if this claim holds up to the evidence that we have, or the evidence that we can gather. let's see if the claim makes sense. And I'm going to invite people out there to help me in this endeavor to see if I can evaluate this claim. Now, say that the evaluation of my claim didn't go well for me. It was shown that there were a lot of different lines of evidence that suggested that my claim could not possibly be true. And what if, in defending my claim, I started lying about people? I would say rude things about them to try to discredit them. I would try to obfuscate as much as I could, and I would misrepresent the evidence that they had to the people that were going to listen to me. But it still didn't work. Say that maybe worked for a little while. It still didn't work. And say all the while people who were writing about my claim were documenting all this because it was part of the story of how these things unwind, how they happen. When we wrote about Swordgate and everything that went down there, we were doing basically a public education project. There was nothing personal in this. It was about the claim, understanding where it came from. As I tell my students, when you're kind of operating outside of the scientific framework, when there's no kind of inherent way to test things, it actually does matter where the claim comes from. So those kind of things are worthy of discussion also, especially to understand the context of these sorts of claims. So anyway, it all happened. It's all real. It's not going to go away by snapping your fingers and threatening to sue someone. That doesn't make it not have happened. It has still happened. It is still there. The reason why I'm talking about all this stuff is because there is now an effort underway to, I think, as I interpret it, try to separate perhaps the claimant from the claim for whatever reason, to try to make it look like, to try to get rid of some of this stuff that may not be flattering anymore about this specific claim, and to get it where people can't see it anymore. So I'm having to think through my strategy for how to, I guess, engage with this attempt to take this work down and to remove some of the value that it has and the persistent value it has as an example of how this sort of thing can work when it works well. And so you can imagine, with all of the effort that I put into it, and a lot of you, that does not sit well with me. I would even guess that those of you who do not agree with me in many aspects of interpretation, whether it's lost civilizations or the distinction between the fringe and the mainstream and all this sort of thing, would still like our disagreements to kind of be litigated on the basis of evidence and arguments and that sort of thing in a kind of forum where it's constructive and useful. I would guess that most of you, even if you disagree with me, and even if you think I'm an ass or whatever, wouldn't try to harass me with the law in order to get me to try to change history. If that's the mechanism that you're going to use to try to change history, we have a problem. I am all about facts. I am all about fairness. I am all about understanding evidence and what it means and how you evaluate it. I mean, that's the stock and trade of what scientists do. If I get something wrong, I am, most of the time, as long as I agree with you that it's wrong, I'm more than happy to take it down. It's never my intent to increase the amount of false information out there. We have plenty of that already. I actually try very hard not to attack people personally, even though I get frustrated with them, as I'm sure everyone does. But it really ultimately is about the evidence and the argument, and that's where I would like to keep it. When people make themselves part of the story, though, in terms of, trust me, this is true, or I'm going to tell you one thing this day, another thing this day, and then pretend that they're the same, that's a problem that becomes part of the story too. That's fair, I think. But, people make comments on YouTube. I'm ugly, fix your teeth, you're boring, whatever. I mean, none of that actually really has to do with these kinds of questions, so I don't really care about that stuff. But I do care about work that gets put into an honest and open discussion and dialogue about a specific claim that was put out there, not by me, but by somebody else. You can set aside, mudslinging, whatever you want to call it, that went on during that, but the claim is still there, and the work that we did to falsify that claim, still valid, still important, as is the structure that allowed that work to happen. So I am not willing to walk away from that, and I don't plan to. What I am doing now is consulting with an attorney to understand my legal position and to figure out some strategy for going forward. So I have created a GoFundMe account to offset some of the fees of that. If you want to support open and honest dialogue about these kind of issues and actual real engagement, I very much encourage you to make a donation if you can. So that's where I'm at right now. I really do. I want to refresh my memory about all these swords and write up a paper someday. It's amazing to me how much of this stuff I've forgotten since we did this, because it was really a lot of fun, and it was an adventure, and I learned a lot about a lot of different things, and I think we got a pretty good outcome in terms of our ability to say something interesting and in terms of how the process worked. So December 16th is the anniversary. That was see how my memory is going? I already forgot. 2015, is that right? So December 16th of this year will be the 4th anniversary of Swordgate. If you are someone who actually likes to see a dialogue and the truth, and you want to see that stuff stay and be protected, I hope you'll consider contributing, and I will put a link down below. Happy Swordgate. It will always be with us one way or another, and I guess, as I've said from the beginning, it ain't over till it's over. And apparently, still not over. All right. Bye-bye.